I'm Grace Whitaker, 32, and I've learned the hard way that the most dangerous lie doesn't sound like a threat. It sounds like family, the kind that shows up in your caller ID when the world is quiet and your guard is down, the kind that makes you reach for your phone before you even open your eyes. That night, I was half asleep in my Seattle apartment, the city outside my window muted by rain, when my screen lit up past midnight. I almost let it ring out. Almost. But something in me said, pick up, just in case. His voice came through thin and shaky like he was trying not to breathe too loud. Grace, please, he said. I need 10,000 right now. It's an emergency. I can't explain everything. I just need you to trust me. I should have asked what hospital. I should have asked for a name, a number, anything. Instead, I heard panic, and I heard my own heartbeat. And I remembered every time I told myself I was done being the responsible one, only to break the second I thought someone might be hurt. So I sat up, opened my banking app, and sent the money before my brain could catch up to my heart. He exhaled like I'd saved his life. Thank you, he whispered. You're the only one who came through. When the call ended, I stared at the ceiling, telling myself I did the right thing. That this was what decent people do. That in the morning, I'd have details, receipts, some kind of proof that my kindness wasn't just being harvested. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No update, no thank you. Just silence. Then on day 3, during my lunch break, my thumb froze on my screen. There he was online, grinning like he'd won the lottery, flashing a brand new Rolex under perfect lighting, captioned like a victory lap. My stomach dropped so hard I tasted metal. I stared at that watch, and all I could think was, my 10,000 is on his wrist. I texted one line, calm on the outside, shaking on the inside. Where's my money? The reply came back fast, casual, almost playful. Relax. Don't rush me. You've got way more than that anyway. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't type a paragraph. I didn't even send an angry emoji. I set my phone down and made one quiet move instead, the kind you don't announce in a family group chat, and you definitely don't post online. I went to bed with my hands steady for the first time since that call, because I knew something he didn't. The next morning, my phone rang again, and this time the voice on the other end wasn't his. It was my sister, whispering so low I could barely hear her. Grace, she said, there are 2 federal agents at my front door asking about him. If you've ever been used by someone who swore they loved you, stay with me. Because what happened after that didn't just ruin his little Rolex moment, it exposed everything he'd been hiding for years. My sister sounded like she was standing in the middle of a nightmare she didn't sign up for. Her voice kept cracking, not in a dramatic way, but in that tight, controlled way people get when they're trying not to fall apart in front of strangers. Grace, they have badges, she whispered. They asked if Tyler lives here. They asked if I'm Paige Whitaker. They said they need to ask me some questions about him and his finances. For a second, I couldn't even process the words. Finances. Federal agents. Tyler. In my head, he was still the guy who could talk his way out of anything, who could make a mistake look like someone else's fault, who could borrow your last dollar and somehow leave you apologizing for being suspicious. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall like the paint might rearrange itself into an answer. Paige, I said carefully, do not let them inside unless they have paperwork. Ask for their names. Ask what agency. Be polite, but don't volunteer anything you're not sure about. She inhaled sharply, like she needed permission to breathe. Okay. Okay. They're saying they just need to verify something. They said your brother listed my address on documents. I closed my eyes. My brother listed your address. There it was. The missing piece. The quiet sickness under the surface I'd been trying not to name. Tyler didn't just lie. He used people. He moved paperwork like chess pieces. He'd always been good at that, even as a kid. If he broke something, he'd swear it was already cracked. If he got caught, he'd smile like it was a misunderstanding and wait for someone else to clean up the mess. And my parents had always helped him get away with it. Boys will be boys, my mom used to say, like that sentence was a magic eraser. I told Paige to call me the second the agents left. Then I hung up and immediately got a call from my mom, like the universe was lining up its punches. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because at that point I needed to know how deep this went. Grace, my mother said, her tone sweet in that way that meant she was already angry. What is going on? Paige is freaking out. She says there are government people at her door. I kept my voice flat. Tyler used her address, I said. Did you know that? Silence. Then a sigh, heavy and theatrical. Your brother is under a lot of stress, honey. Sometimes he makes choices when he's scared. That's when I realized my mother wasn't surprised. She was inconvenienced. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Mom, I said. He called me at midnight and took $10,000 from me with a fake emergency. 3 days later, he's wearing it on his wrist. Don't tell me he's scared. Tell me why he's using Paige's address. My mom's voice sharpened. Don't accuse him of faking anything. You don't know what he's dealing with. And you make good money, Grace. You always have. You can help your family without making it ugly. There it was. The script. Family. Help. Don't make it ugly. Translation. You take the loss quietly so he doesn't have to face consequences. I could almost hear my dad in the background. That low grumble he did when he wanted to sound like the final authority. Grace, he said, don't overreact. Just talk to your brother. Handle it privately. We don't need outsiders involved. Outsiders. That word made my skin crawl, because this wasn't about outsiders. This was about Tyler dragging everyone into his mess and expecting us to smile while we sank. I didn't tell them about the quiet move I'd already made. I didn't argue with their guilt trip, because I'd learned arguing with them was like arguing with a locked door. Instead, I asked one question, slow and clear. Dad, how long has Tyler been using Paige's address? Another silence. Longer this time. Then my dad muttered, it was just for mail. He needed a stable address for a while. He's trying to get back on his feet. I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. A stable address. Paige is a nurse. She works 12-hour shifts. She's raising 2 kids. She doesn't need federal agents showing up at her door because our brother wanted a stable address for his latest scheme. I opened my laptop and started pulling up everything I'd saved since that midnight call. The transfer confirmation. The timestamps. His text telling me to relax. The screenshot of his Rolex post. Because one thing my job had taught me was simple: if you don't document it, it didn't happen. And Tyler had no idea that his little joke text had just turned into the cleanest piece of evidence I could ask for. A few minutes later, Paige called back, voice shaking again. Grace, she said, they asked if I'd ever let Tyler use my social security number. My stomach dropped. Paige, I said, have you ever given him any personal info? She went quiet, then whispered, I never gave him anything, but he knows everything. He's my brother. He knows my birthday. He knows where I was born. I stared at the screen, my fingers cold on the keyboard. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about $10,000. This was about identity. And if Tyler had been desperate enough to lie to me at midnight and brag with a Rolex at noon, there was no telling what he'd done with Paige's name while we were all busy being family. By the time the sun finally pushed through the clouds, I hadn't slept. Not because I was crying or spiraling, but because my brain was moving too fast to let me. I kept replaying Paige's whisper like it was a siren in my head. They asked if I ever let Tyler use my social security number. That wasn't a casual question. That was the kind of question people ask when they already have a reason to suspect something. I made coffee. I never drank and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, building a timeline the way I would for any risk review at work. Midnight call, 10,000 sent, 3 days of silence, Rolex post, smug text, federal agents at Paige's door. Every piece lined up too cleanly, and that was what scared me the most. Tyler wasn't just irresponsible, he was organized when it benefited him. He was the kind of person who could lie with a straight face because he'd rehearsed it in his head long before he ever said it out loud. I called Paige again and made her repeat exactly what the agent said, word for word, even if it made her uncomfortable. She told me they asked about addresses, bank accounts, and whether she had ever co-signed anything for Tyler. Then she paused and admitted something she'd been embarrassed to say. A few months ago, Tyler had asked her to receive a couple of pieces of mail for him because he was in between places. He'd promised it was just a temporary thing. Paige said she'd agreed because our mom told her to stop being cold. Stop being suspicious. Help your brother. The same line they always used, just dressed up with a softer voice. Paige said she never opened the mail. She just stacked it and forwarded it when Tyler asked. My chest tightened. Paige, I said, do you still have any of it? She hesitated. I threw most of it away, but there might be one envelope left. I told her not to touch it, not to open it, to put it somewhere safe and take a photo of the front and back. Then I hung up and stared at the ceiling, realizing Tyler had done the one thing I couldn't forgive. He didn't just steal money, he used my sister as cover. In my world, when someone uses another person's address, name, or information, it's never innocent. It's either to hide, to dodge, or to shift blame when things collapse. And Tyler was already collapsing. I pulled up my bank records and downloaded the receipt of the transfer. Not just a screenshot, the full transaction confirmation. I saved his text messages and exported them. I took a clean screenshot of his Rolex post with the time and date visible. Then I screen recorded it too because I didn't trust him not to delete it the second he realized he'd messed up. I wasn't doing this to play detective for fun. I was doing it because I could feel a trap closing. When people get investigated, they start pointing fingers. And Tyler was the type who would point at whoever was closest. That could be me. That could be Paige. That could be both of us. Just to save himself. My phone buzzed again. My dad. Grace, he said. Your mother is beside herself. Tyler says you're making him look bad. I could hear Tyler in the background, loud and agitated, like he was performing anger for an audience. You didn't have to do this, Grace, he yelled. You always have to be dramatic. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I asked my dad one question. Dad, I said, did Tyler ever have access to Paige's paperwork? Her mail? Her bank info? Her credit? My dad snapped, don't be ridiculous. Then my mom jumped in, sharp and fast. Stop interrogating us. This is why Tyler can't come to you. You act like you're better than everyone. The old poison. The same guilt wrapped in different paper. I ended the call before they could keep pushing me into their script. Then I did the thing I should have done years ago, the thing I was always too tired or too hopeful to do. I called an attorney. Not a family friend. Not someone my parents could influence. A real attorney with a reputation for being calm and ruthless on paper. Her name was Harper Delaney, and when she answered, I didn't start with feelings. I started with facts. I told her about the midnight call, the $10,000, the Rolex, the agents at my sister's door, and the possibility of identity misuse. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She just said, okay. First, you stop talking to anyone about this except me. Second, you gather every record you have. Third, you protect yourself. Because if your brother used your sister's address, he might have used your name too. Hearing that out loud made my stomach flip, but it also made everything click. That was the quiet move I'd made. Not revenge. Protection. Harper told me we could send a formal notice to Tyler demanding repayment and instructing him to stop using any family addresses or information. She said, we could also respond to any inquiry through proper channels without me giving messy, emotional statements that could be twisted later. She asked if I had proof he lied about the emergency. I looked at the screenshot of his Rolex, the caption, the timing. Proof wasn't the problem. Tyler had gifted it to me with a bow on top. Harper's voice stayed even. People like your brother rely on chaos, she said. If we take away the chaos, they panic. They make mistakes. And mistakes create consequences. After I got off the phone, I sat there in the quiet and realized something that made my throat tighten. Tyler thought my kindness was a weakness. He thought he could take my money, laugh at me, and hide behind Mom and Dad like he always had. He thought Paige would stay silent because she was too busy and too nice. He thought federal agents showing up was just another storm he could talk his way through. He didn't realize the storm had a center. And this time, I wasn't going to stand in the rain begging him to stop. I was going to step out of his reach, lock every door he'd been slipping through, and let him face what he'd been dodging for years. Paige called me again an hour later, and this time she wasn't whispering. She sounded stiff, like she'd switched into survival mode. "They're still here, Grace," she said. "They asked to confirm Tyler's last known address and whether he receives mail at my house." I told her to keep it simple, to answer only what she knew for sure, and to let them know she never gave him permission to use anything beyond receiving mail. A few minutes passed. Then she exhaled hard. "They left a card," she said. "They said someone used my address on financial records and they need to verify I'm not involved." My stomach turned, but my voice stayed calm. "You did the right thing," I told her. "Do not talk to Tyler. Don't argue with Mom and Dad. If anyone calls, tell them to email you. Everything in writing." Paige went quiet. Then her voice cracked anyway. "Grace, what if he ruined my credit? What if he opened something in my name?" I hated that she even had to ask. I told her we'd pull her credit reports and freeze her credit immediately, and that Harper would help us respond properly if the agency contacted her again. Right after that call, my phone lit up with Tyler's name. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, and it was pure rage wrapped in fake heartbreak. "You really did this to me," he shouted. "After everything, you're gonna call the feds on your own brother. You're sick, Grace. You always wanted me to fail." Then he texted like he was performing for an audience. "Hope you're happy. Mom's crying. Dad's furious. You just destroyed this family." I didn't reply. I forwarded every message to Harper and went back to work, like my life depended on staying steady. Because it did. That afternoon, Tyler posted a video. He sat in his car, eyes red, talking about betrayal, saying his rich sister refused to help him in an emergency. He didn't say my name, but he didn't need to. People who knew us would connect the dots. Comments poured in fast. Some called him brave. Some called me heartless. Some begged him to drop a Cash App link. And there it was, the pattern I'd seen my whole life. Tyler didn't want to fix a problem. He wanted a crowd. He wanted noise loud enough to drown out the truth. My mom sent me a paragraph in the family chat I'd muted years ago, then repeated it in a direct text. "Grace, stop this. He made a mistake. But he's still your brother. You have the money. Why are you doing this to us?" My dad texted one line that felt like a threat. "We'll remember what you chose." I stared at those messages, then I opened Harper's email draft and watched my own hands stop shaking. Tyler could scream online all he wanted. The only thing that mattered now was paper, dates, receipts, and the fact that he'd been careless enough to brag with my $10,000 on his wrist. That night, Paige sent me a photo of the envelope she'd found. Still unopened, Tyler's handwriting on it with her address printed clean on the label. I saved it, backed it up, and went to sleep knowing the next time Tyler tried to twist the story, he'd run into something he couldn't guilt trip, charm, or talk his way out of. By the end of the week, Tyler finally did what he always did when he felt cornered. He tried to turn it into a show. Harper had sent him a formal notice demanding repayment of the $10,000 and warning him to stop using any family addresses or personal information. The letter was calm, factual, and that alone made him spiral. My dad called and ordered a family meeting at my parents' place outside Tacoma, like we were settling a curfew violation, not a financial betrayal. I agreed to come on one condition: Harper would be on speaker, and everything would stay civil. The second I walked in, Tyler was on the couch wearing the Rolex like a trophy. Mom looked like she'd been crying for days. Dad stood with his arms crossed, ready to play judge. Tyler smirked and said, "There she is. Miss Perfect." I didn't sit. I put a folder on the coffee table and slid my phone next to it. Mom went first, begging me to drop the lawyer and handle it like family. Dad backed her up, saying I was making it ugly and embarrassing my brother. Tyler leaned into it, mocking me for caring about 10 grand, then hit me with the line that made my stomach go cold. "You've got way more than that anyway." I didn't argue. I just asked, "Tell me what the emergency was." "Say it out loud." Tyler hesitated, just for a second. But that second was everything. He looked at our parents like he wanted them to feed him an excuse. Dad jumped in saying it was personal, and Tyler didn't owe me details. That's when I opened the folder and laid out the receipts like a timeline, the transfer confirmation with the date and time, the screenshot of Tyler's Rolex post 3 days later, the text where he told me to relax and not rush him. Then I said the part they didn't want to hear. Federal agents showed up at Paige's door because Tyler used her address on documents. Mom snapped at me not to involve Paige, like Paige was a prop, not a person. Tyler instantly blamed it on a mistake, saying they had the wrong address. I looked him in the eye and said, "Paige has an envelope with her address and your handwriting. Agents don't knock for fun." Tyler's smirk faded, not into regret, just into fear. Then he switched tactics and tried to make me the villain. He accused me of wanting him to fail, of acting superior, of tearing the family apart. Dad took a step toward me and said, "Enough. You're ruining this family." I didn't flinch. I pressed one button and put Harper on speaker. Her voice cut through the room like ice. "Tyler owes Grace $10,000 by end of business Monday. No more harassment, no more online defamation, and no further use of Paige's address or information. If investigators contact any of you again, do not obstruct and do not pressure Grace to interfere." Tyler's face went red. "You can't do this," he snapped. Harper didn't raise her voice. "Tyler, you already did this the moment you took the money and then publicly displayed a luxury purchase while refusing repayment. That's a trail. A clear one." Mom started crying harder. Dad went quiet. And Tyler, because he can't help himself, pulled out his phone and started recording, trying to bait me into reacting. I stayed calm and said one sentence that ended his performance. "Stop filming, pay me back." He sneered, or what? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My phone buzzed with a text from Paige. 2 words that confirmed the worst. He used me. 3 days after that family meeting, Tyler thought he could bully me back into silence. He posted another tearful video, hinting that I was heartless and obsessed with money. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. He wanted strangers to shame me into paying the price for his lie. The problem was, every time he posted, he added another timestamp. Another piece of public proof that his story didn't match the reality. While he chased attention, Paige did something smarter. She pulled her credit reports. Within an hour, she called me, voice flat with anger. "Grace, there's an account here I didn't open." That's when it stopped being just my $10,000. Tyler hadn't only taken my money, he'd dragged Paige into his mess with paperwork, the same way he'd used her address as a shield. Harper told Paige to freeze her credit immediately and keep every document untouched. Then Harper handled the rest through formal channels, because chaos is Tyler's favorite weapon and paperwork is his weakness. My parents tried one last push. Mom called crying, begging me to fix it, like I had broken something. Dad texted that we were tearing the family apart. I didn't argue. I gave them one sentence. Tyler lied at midnight, bragged 3 days later, and now Paige has agents at her door. This isn't family drama. This is damage. Then I stopped answering calls. Tyler tried calling me directly next, not to apologize, to negotiate. "Can you just say it was a gift?" he whispered, like he was asking me to erase the past with one lie. I told him no. He snapped back, blaming stress, blaming me, blaming mom and dad, trying every angle. Then he tried the guilt card. "You're going to ruin mom," he said. I shut it down. "If you cared about her, you wouldn't have used your sisters as collateral." Silence. He hung up. After that, the internet started turning on him. Someone stitched his crying clip next to the Rolex post. Others shared his "relax, don't rush me" text like it was a punchline. The comments shifted from sympathy to suspicion, and Tyler did what people like him always do when the spotlight gets hot. He deleted posts, changed handles, tried to reset the story, but screenshots don't disappear. Paige finally broke her own silence in the family chat with one message that ended the excuses. "If Tyler contacts any of you, don't give him money and don't give him your address. He used mine. I've provided documentation." Even mom didn't respond after that. It was the first time Tyler didn't have the room on his side. A week later, Tyler's Rolex was gone. Not because he suddenly grew a conscience, but because he needed cash fast and his usual sources had dried up. Harper arranged repayment through proper channels, and Tyler wired the first chunk. No jokes, no smirk. Just a cold transfer with my name in the memo like a confession. Then another payment came in. By the end of the month, the full $10,000 was back in my account. It didn't undo the betrayal, but it proved the ugliest truth of all. He could have paid me back any time. He just didn't think he had to. And while the money returned, something else disappeared for good. Tyler's power. Because his power was never strength. It was our guilt. Once Paige stopped being polite and I stopped reacting, the spell broke. Tyler was still loud, still angry, still calling himself the victim, but the family finally saw what I'd seen for years. The moment you stop rescuing someone, you find out whether they ever wanted to change at all. 2 years later, my life looks nothing like it did the night Tyler called at midnight. Not because everything magically healed, but because I stopped letting chaos rent space in my head. I got promoted at work, moved into a quieter place in Seattle, and built routines that actually belonged to me instead of whatever emergency my family invented. Paige and I became closer than we ever were as kids, not through forced holidays or group chats, but through honest conversations and small, steady support. We talk like sisters who survived the same storm and finally learned how to lock the doors. We still laugh, but it's a different kind of laugh now, the kind that comes from safety. My parents changed, but not in a movie-style way where everyone hugs and apologizes and the credits roll. At first, they stayed embarrassed and defensive, like my boundaries were an insult. Then reality did what my words never could. They had to live with what Tyler cost them. The nights they couldn't sleep, the calls they dreaded answering, the quiet shame of realizing they had protected the wrong person for too long. Eventually, my dad stopped saying family meeting and started saying, "I'm sorry." Not perfectly, not dramatically, just a tired, real apology that sounded like someone finally admitting the truth. My mom still tries to smooth things over sometimes, still hates conflict, still wants everyone to pretend. But she doesn't demand I sacrifice myself anymore. She learned that calling something love doesn't make it love. Tyler came back smaller. That's the only honest way to describe it. After he paid me back, he disappeared for a while, then resurfaced without the swagger. No Rolex, no speeches, no inspirational captions. He got a normal job, kept his head down, and stopped chasing attention like it was oxygen. The first letter he sent me wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a complaint dressed up as reflection, saying he'd gone through hell and lost everything. He still couldn't fully admit that he built the fire himself. I didn't reply. Silence was the boundary he deserved, and it was the peace I earned. Paige made her own choice, too. She cut him off completely. She said forgiveness didn't mean access, and she was done letting anyone gamble with her family's safety. Watching her do that was its own kind of healing, because it reminded me I wasn't crazy for wanting protection. I wasn't cold. I wasn't selfish. I was finally being fair to myself. The biggest lesson wasn't about money. The $10,000 came back. But it was never the real cost. The real cost was the way Tyler expected my compassion to be endless and unquestioned. Like I existed to clean up his mess and smile while doing it. I learned that helping someone once doesn't obligate you to keep rescuing them forever. And I learned something else that I wish someone had told me earlier. Boundaries are not punishments. They're protection. They're how you keep love from turning into leverage. If you're the responsible one in your family, the reliable one, the one people call when they need something, remember this: your kindness isn't a blank check. Your success isn't community property. And you do not have to prove your love by letting someone drain you. When I think back to that night, I don't feel guilt anymore. I feel clarity. I didn't ruin my family. I stopped enabling the person who was willing to ruin all of us. And once I made that quiet move, everything Tyler was hiding finally had space to be seen. So here's my question for you. If your own brother called at midnight begging for money, then mocked you 3 days later while flashing a brand new Rolex, what would you do next? Would you chase him with anger? Or would you do what I did and let the truth speak louder than the noise? Our team at Revenge Argon works hard to create powerful, meaningful scripts that entertain while delivering valuable lessons. This story is purely fictional and made for educational purposes, aiming to share positive takeaways and thoughtful perspectives with every viewer. I respect how Grace stayed calm, gathered receipts, and protected herself instead of reacting with pure emotion. She let the truth do the heavy lifting. She didn't chase chaos. She set boundaries and handled it the smart, legal way. If you were in her shoes, would you demand the money back immediately? Or would you make the same quiet move and let consequences speak for themselves?